Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for tonight's Preservation School Art Deco in the Bronx. Our upcoming programming includes an accessibility panel, Accessibility in Historic Structures, Districts, and Landscapes on January 30th. Information about all of our upcoming programming can be found on our website, hdc.org. If you have any questions about programming, you can contact me at marbulu@hdc.org. Tonight's class will be recorded and posted to our YouTube channel for free viewing. You may also watch all of our previous Preservation School classes, virtual tours, and conference panels on our YouTube channel. I would like to thank the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, City Council, and the New York State Council on the Arts for supporting Preservation School. If you have any questions about Art Deco in the Bronx, you can add them to the chat and John will address them at the end. Now I will hand it over to John Howard to lead tonight's class. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. And I hope that you learned something and enjoy what you have learned. I've been asked to give a very brief resume of what actual Art Deco is for those who are maybe confused or want to learn a little bit more. So I'm going to start with what is essentially a very brief, unauthorized, and if you like, my own version of this history. But I think it covers pretty much everything that it should. So this Art Deco style is the description of the style that was prevalent in practically every continent from 1925 until 1941. That's the conventional wisdom that it started in 1925 at this exhibition, which you'll see on your screen, which is the entrance gate to the exhibition. And this was the Exposition des Arts Décoratifs industriel. We don't say much about the industriel, but it's important in the history. This was an exhibition that was mounted by the French government, so it had the full weight of the government behind it, and it was basically to promote French industrial arts. And this first picture here, I think, is instructive because this large building here that you see behind these rather grand portals, was built 25 years before for an exhibition which the French government also held in 1900. And this is to illustrate the change that happened in the design and architecture fields between those two dates. You'll see that this building here has all the elements of classical architecture, domes and arches and columns. And Art Deco was a style which reflected the changes that had taken place since then in people's sensibility about the modern world. And Art Deco embraced the idea of modernism, industrialization, and mass production. But it was very modern, as opposed to referring to the old classical styles which went back to antiquity. But it wasn't modern in the sense that it was avant-garde. I just want to show you a couple of things here on this picture. If you look at this column here, you'll see this design here, which looks like a waterfall. This was one of the design motifs that was familiar in the Art Deco style. The fluting of these columns, which was based on fluting of Greek columns, but done in the modern style. And this stylistic kind of representation here were all very typical of the Art Deco style. These are some of the buildings which were in the exposition, and they all, most of these represent kind of French businesses. This is a French publishing house, and you'll see a lot of the things which are very familiar in the Art Deco style, which is this zigzag pattern here and the rounding of corners, which came later in the streamlined modern style. Now, this change from the old style to the new style was actually quite a big deal. And um, people were, since the turn of the century, had been grappling with the idea of how to represent modernity in all of its forms. And this was kind of how it was agreed that it would be looking in the commercial world. Now, it wasn't called Art Deco at that time. They weren't self-conscious about what the style was. This just happened to be the modern decorated style. And it wasn't until 1966, when there was a retrospective of this exhibition and other styles of the interwar period in Paris, that art historians and architectural historians began to refer to it as Art Deco. So it was kind of named posthumously, if you like. Um, um, but it wasn't all decorated. Now, this is the Information Bureau at the exposition, and it was designed by an architect who probably wouldn't be described as Art Deco now. His name was Robert Mellet Stevens, and he was a French modernist who was part of the um, avant-garde, if you will. And the thing about Art Deco is that it borrowed extensively from all of the new art movements which had grown up around the turn of the century. And there were many of them. There were many isms, and I'll kind of run through them all. I'm sure you're familiar with them. And these were theoretical positions on art, what the people that belong to each of these groups thought modern art should be and represent. And many of them had manifestos, and many of them fought amongst themselves about who were the true deliverers of this new modernism. There was Cubism, there was Orphism, of which Sonia and Robert Delaunay, their colorful geometric designs were very influential in Art Deco. There was Purism, of which this guy, Millet Stevens, and this guy who designed this building, Le Corbusier, the much derided Le Corbusier, he managed to find his way into the Art Deco exhibition in 1925. And they called themselves purists because, along with all of the other isms, the general feeling about the avant-garde and architecture was that you should never put decoration on a modern building. It was taboo. If it had decoration on it, it wasn't modern. And that was pretty much shared by the futurists in Italy, the Vorsatists in England, the neoplasticists in Holland, which included Mondrian, the Russian constructivists and suprematists, the expressionists in German, and the Bauhaus school. They all agreed, about the only thing that they all agreed on was that there shouldn't be any decoration in architecture. And the Art Deco people, the people who later began described as Art Deco architects, didn't think that. And essentially, theirs was a decorated modern style. And the thing about it is that since it was largely commercial inspired, and it was there to further the commerce of the time. And that's kind of an important distinction to make between the avant-garde modernists and the Art Deco modernists. But in time, and even kind of until fairly recently, Art Deco was derided by the modern purists. But as you'll see from my presentation, there's much more to Art Deco than anybody thought at the time. So this is for the pavilion of the Galerie Lafayette, which is a big supermarket chain, a department store chain in France. I think it still exists. And you'll see this is a typical pattern of Art Deco design. And you would think that it would represent the sunburst and the energy. But in fact, what that represents, as you'll see here, from the lobby of a building, which I'm sure you'll all recognize, which is the Empire State Building. That same pattern exists here around the top of the spire of the Empire State Building, and that essentially represents radio. If it doesn't represent radio, it represents electricity. And both of those were becoming generally available in this time period. 1925, I think commercial radio had only existed for about 5 years. And this was the symbol of that advanced technology. So what happened was is that from that exposition, it transpires that this style was perfect for the skyscraper, which was a brand new invention in its height. Before I go on to this, I just wanted to say, in terms of the things that influenced Art Deco, apart from all of those European isms, there was a huge influence from the early American architectural revolutionaries. That's Louis Sullivan and Frank Lloyd Wright. And before them, the Scottish Art Nouveau, Charles Rennie Mackintosh. They were also very influential, and a lot of their designs were absorbed into the Art Deco style. All right, so this is what the radio gave us. It gave us radios in the Art Deco style. But this is what the skyscraper gave us. As you can see here, this is the iconic Chrysler building. And you will see this is Van Allen's interpretation of that radiation and the zigzag. This is the brick patterning, which we'll see. These gargoyles are supposed to have been inspired by the hood ornament of the Chrysler cars. And this was the Chrysler building. It was built to promote that brand of automobile. This is the McGraw-Hill building. And these essentially were revolutionary buildings, not in the sense of the avant-garde purists, but in anybody's sense that this was how to deal with large buildings and integrate modernity into them in a way which people could understand. This is the McGraw-Hill. This is by Raymond Hood, a great architect of that period. And this is his masterpiece, which is Rockefeller Center. Unfortunately, we can't get this view of Rockefeller Center anymore because they built a building on this bit here in front of it. But it just grows to show how influential the various different precursors to Art Deco were. The stepping of the masses, the handling of the huge scale of these buildings, in a way could only be properly realized with an Art Deco sensibility. So this is the RCA building, and they were making all of the radios that people were buying. And this is the entrance to that building, and this gives you an idea of how fabulous the decoration in the Art Deco style was. And it stole from everybody. This particular image here is stolen from the English mystic artist and poet William Blake. You'll see that the hope was that everything would be solved with the latest technology. This is the lobby of the Radio City Music Hall, fabulous building still today. This is how the movies took to Art Deco. It was perfect for them. They were, again, like radio. They were the burgeoning popular entertainment. And this is Joan Crawford in a very beautiful Art Deco flapper dress. This is, what's her name? You must know her from the movies, sitting at a beautiful Art Deco fireplace, which I hope we're going to see similar ones in the presentation about Bronx Art Deco. This is how Art Deco permeated all fields. This is an advert for a very Deco movie, which you probably all know, The Metropolis, which shows how the style influenced the advertising. This is the same influence in travel at the time, for railroad travel, which was getting, which had been around for a long time, but was kind of getting very popular and and the way to travel before air. This is how the style influenced design of the actual trains, and it permeated throughout the whole of the culture. This is a little building which still exists in the Bronx. It's kind of a streamlined modern bank building from 1930, and it still exists. It's going strong as the Seven Light Baptist Church. It's on the corner of Claremont and Third Avenues in the Bronx. And it had appended to it these beautiful cast concrete Art Deco designs, which show similarities to all of the stuff that we've been looking at. This is the lines that go to infinity. This is the power of the train. This is an urban landscape which shows skyscrapers here. This is airships, which didn't actually pan out too well, as we all know, with the Hindenburg, but was the latest technology for travel. This is also an evocation of the might of the industry and how it's going to solve all of our problems. And this is how the rich would travel across the Atlantic in an ocean liner, and then there was flight, which was frequently an evocation in the Art Deco style. And this is the Wagner building on the corner of Grand Concourse and Fordham Road. And it shows the Bronx interpretation of the waterfall style here, and these beautiful glazed terracotta tiles. Here's the zigzag that we saw and a variation on the zigzag. This is a streamlined modern Deco car, a very expensive one, the Cord. But if you could afford a Ford, it was also pretty streamlined. Not too many buildings in the suburbs were built in that style, but there were a few. They were very simple. They exaggerated the horizontal lines, very simple black and white striping, which we'll see in other things. The glazed brick, which is the glass brick, which is a very frequent material used in Art Deco. This is what you would see, and I'm sure many of you might have seen in the homes of your grandparents or parents. This is the waterfall style of furniture, showing zigzag veneer. This is an Art Deco streamlined modern refrigerator from 1939. And for your kids, you would buy a beautiful Art Deco scooter. And if you could afford it, you would live in one of the wonderful Art Deco buildings on Central Park West. This is the El Dorado. And that brings us to the Bronx. So I hope that gives you an idea of what it was and where it came from and how it fitted in with the history of modernism. I just wanted to add here that at the same time that the Rockefeller Center was built, 1932, there was an exhibition at MoMA mounted by Philip Johnson and Henry Russell Hitchcock, which announced that the international style, which was the style of the purists, of the Bauhaus school, and all of the other ists that insisted that they were the true modernists, they declared that that was to be the modern style. And luckily, they didn't prevail until after the war, when it did become the official modern corporate style, what we call the international style. And we're lucky that we had, in the interwar period, Art Deco, which left us with many beautiful buildings. Yeah. All right, so that's Art Deco. And now we're going to go to Art Deco in the Bronx. And the conventional wisdom is that the Bronx has more Art Deco apartment houses than anybody else, any other borough or anywhere else in the world. Oh. And that was never backed up with any facts. And when I first developed this interest in around 2005, I figured I'd try and find out how many Art Deco buildings there were, apartment houses there were actually in the Bronx. And in my archive, I've collected so far about 350. There are probably another 50 out there at various different stages of decay. Um, but the pursuit of this list was just something that I thought that I would do because it interested me. And during the search, I discovered all kinds of things about Art Deco which I'd never known before. And I'm hoping that this description of the archive will show you what I discovered. Here is the heart of the site. Um, this is the search page, and you can find, if you want to know if you live in an Art Deco building, you can just type the address of your building here, and if it's there, it'll come up. If it's not, it won't. This is how I have devised the site. Um, these are the various different styles that I've discovered in my research, which we're going to examine. These are the important architects, and these top seven, I call them the Magnificent Seven, between them designed probably over half of the Art Deco buildings in the Bronx and Upper Manhattan. And I feel that they ought to be better known, which was another thing that came up when I was doing my research. And this is a collection that I've made of the various different buildings, which shows the parts of them which I think are notable and are worth looking at. So the first building that I'm going to start with is this one here, which I'm hoping here. Okay, so this is 1504 Sheridan Avenue. And this is, excuse me, this is an example of the early Deco style, which is before the classic Bronx Art Deco buildings started. And it shows you some of the elements. You can see up here on this beautiful terracotta coating, the zigzag. These are the geometric brick patterns, which were kind of evolving at that time. Oops. Not sure why that happens there. This is how the building looks. Unfortunately, when you see a building with the bridge here, it's probably not a good sign, although I have been checking on this one. They haven't messed with it too much. This is how the building looked in 1940 or thereabouts. And I tried to incorporate these photographs into the website because it gives you an idea of how many of these buildings looked before they lost their parapets. But it's an interesting collection. It's put out by the municipal archives. And in the Depression, the WPA hired a whole bunch of architects to work with the New York City Tax Department to take a photograph of every building on every lot in every borough. And luckily enough, some of these photographs are actually quite nice. And this shows that building looking very much the same as it always did. So here you can see again the zigzag in the pattern of the brickwork. If I can bring this closer to you. Sorry for that interruption. Here in the lobby of this building, which gives an idea of what's to come, the ground floor apartments are accessed through these nice little stoops. Which is a good idea. Here, you can see the zigzag pattern, which is the classic Art Deco pattern in the plaster. And wherever they could apply it, they would. And here you can see it in the brickwork. And this is, again, a very typical wave Art Deco pattern. So this is early Deco. And you can use the website to select all of the early Deco buildings, and you'll see how they differed. All right, so now the next style is the classic Bronx Deco style. And you'll see that this is the most familiar of the Bronx Deco styles. It has the corner window. It has frequently has two or three colors of brick. It has vertical and horizontal brick banding, and mostly the architectural interest takes place at the top and the entrance, with this nice stepping and decorative capping to the parapet. This is the entrance to this building. You'll see the classic zigzag cast stone panels. This pattern of vertical brick turning into horizontal brick is very typical of Art Deco. The lobbies are in themselves things of beauty. This is a style of terrazzo, which we'll find in 7 other buildings. I think that the style and the pattern was probably selected from a catalog of a terrazzo contractor. And I think that this is influenced by the Delaunay couple who used geometric shapes. This is typical of the parapets on the classic Bronx Deco. And this is how beautifully integrated into the scale of the street the Art Deco style is. And this again is a photograph from the 1940s to show that building is, we're lucky that that building is unchanged since then. Okay, so let's see if we can go to the next category of building. All right, so this is what I call sawtooth deco. Now, this is a style, a variation of the classic Bronx Deco style, where the architects create vertical rows of corner windows by essentially folding the facade. And this is a terrific variation on Deco, of which the Bronx has the best and most examples. And architecturally, I think that this is unique in many ways. And again, it shows how good the Art Deco style is in integrating itself into the urban landscape. There's the 1940s photograph, shows the wonderful canopy, which still had all of its stainless steel. Looks a little bit like a movie house. These are little decorative deco fins evoking flight or whatever back in the day. And this is the typical delicate brick patterning that you found in Art Deco. This is 2007. The building's still looking good. And the lobby is really nice. It shows the fluting, which was very familiar thing in the Deco style, and the wonderful fake fireplaces and the zigzag pattern in the terrazzo. Wonderful building, a beautiful building. All right. I think now we're going to have to go on to the next style, which is what I call the closed corner Deco style. Not all of the Deco buildings had corner windows. Some of the most majestic were like this, where the corner implied a corner window, kind of with a horizontal brick pattern. And this shows this building, unfortunately, has lost this nice Art Deco parapet built up there. Unfortunately, it still existed when the tax photograph was taken, but unfortunately, I think sometime in the 60s it lost it. This is the lobby of that building. It's a fabulous lobby. It goes on for miles and miles and miles. And some decorator decided to cover it all in Regency wallpaper. I don't know when that happened, but it doesn't seem to diminish from the beauty of the Art Deco style, because Art Deco kind of stole from every style, and this doesn't look out of place in this lobby. And again, you'll see this evocation of electricity and the pattern on the terrazzo floor. Um, the minimalist fake fireplace, which is not even pretending to be anything else, but it's there. And again, the little stoops which give access to the first floor apartments. Terrific lobby. Goes on forever in every direction. This wonderful Art Deco curved metalwork on the entry. And that's what the building looked like in the 50s. And that's what it looks like today. It's still a very strong presence, even though it lost that kind of wedding cake on the central section. So that's closed corner deco. And the next style is streamline modern. Okay, now this is one of my favorites, of course. And this is a fabulous building by an architect called Israel Craftsman. And like most of the architects working in the Bronx and Upper Manhattan, they'd been around since before the Art Deco style and were very competent in designing in the styles, the classical styles that preceded it. But when Art Deco came along, they had no problem in adopting it because they were extremely skilled. And this guy, Israel Krasman, was able to design in every single one of the Art Deco styles, the early Deco style, the closed corner style, the streamlined modern style. I'm not sure, yes, and even the sawtooth Deco style. So this is a fabulous building at the top of the Grand Concourse in 206th Street. And this is how it looks from St. George's. This is the entrance. Unfortunately, these are kind of in keeping, these little planters, but they're not Art Deco, but the rest of it is. And this is typical of the Art Deco entrance. It's called cast stone, but it's actually concrete. And the curved corners with the striping and the vertical striping and the columns is very Deco. And then inside, the use of glass block makes a wonderful light in the lobby. This is photographs I took in about 2005 when it had a really tacky paint job. And this is how it looks today, with a wonderful diffusion of light into the lobby through these glass block walls. And this is again one of the old photographs. At that time, it actually had Art Deco lobby furniture, lobby tables, which unfortunately are not there anymore. And that's a view through the window. And this gives a wonderful view of how sculptural this streamlined modern style was. And this is the 206th Street side. So a fabulous building. All right. The next style is going to be, this is an interesting style, I think. Hold on a minute. This is a style of which there aren't too many. And I call it dissociative identity deco, because it's deco, but it hasn't been able to get rid of the historical half-timbered Tudor effect that it maintains here on this facade. So it's Deco, but it didn't want to go all the way. Couldn't decide that it was going to be thoroughly Deco. And for those who weren't so modern in sensibility, it had um, this half timbered look. And if you look at the entrance, it looks as if it's kind of a conventional historical building. If you look at the rendering, you'll see the historical Tudor entrance, but then you'll see these very modern Art Deco corner windows next to it. So that's the split personality of the dissociative identity Deco. It's got this fabulous lobby inside with this historical fresco, but the pattern around the terrazzo is very Deco. So Deco will mix with any and all styles. So that's DID, dissociative identity Deco. And then we've got a couple more. This is oddball Deco. And this is a typical example of oddball Deco, which is a building in way at the bottom of White Plains Road. And it's a small 5-story walk-up building built, I think, in the early 30s. And it has all of these wonderful Art Deco cast stone elements in the parapet, the diamond pattern, the vertical patterns of the brick. And it's just unusual to see it in that style of building. This is what it looks from the side, and that's what it looks like from the front. And you could walk past that building a million times and not give it a second glance until you looked up and then you saw how wonderful the Deco parapet was. All right, and then I think that's the end of my styles of Deco. And what I have to show you lastly is what's happening to these beautiful buildings. And it's not nice. And during the course of putting this website together, it occurred to me that unless we protect these buildings, more of what I'm going to show you is going to happen. And the patrimony of Art Deco buildings in the Bronx is going to be severely diminished. This is a wonderful building right at the top of Mosholu Parkway and where it meets Gun Hill Road. And this is how it used to look. And it's in the early Deco style. You can see the beginnings of the brick patterning here, the aspirational stepped pattern of the brickwork, looking for vertical patterns here. And if you look at the entrance, has this wonderful Art Deco cast stone plaque. This again is the waterfalls evoked in these little curlicues here, and the stepped concrete. And then that's how it looked in 1940, exactly the same. This is the fabulous lobby with this beautiful terrazzo patterned floor. Great detail in the plaster work. This is all marble. I thought it was faux marble to begin with, but it's all marble in its original condition. Has this wonderful mural. And unfortunately, this is more of the Art Deco fins and wave style, the beautiful detail in the plaster. This is how the entrance lobby looks. This is how it looked in 2000 and 1940-ish when it was built. And then when you see the sidewalk bridge come along, you know something bad is going to happen. And it does. They start taking down the parapets because they don't want to spend enough time to replicate them, or they don't want to spend enough imagination to figure out a way of strengthening them. And this is what you get. And essentially, when you've done that, you've ruined a perfectly good Art Deco building. And somewhere in somebody's warehouse, this beautiful little Art Deco cast stone plaque is probably having a outrageous price sticker put on it. So that's one example of the fragility of these buildings. I don't know whether I want to show you some of these others. They're just as bad. This is a wonderful early Deco building with a fantastic kind of rocketry in the parapet. There's the original building from the 40s. This is how it looked a year ago. It's fabulous. It's got the same kind of design of the entry. The lobby is kind of proto-deco, great plaster work in it. This is a nice deco building across the street. And this is what it looks like now. It's kind of denatured, although they still left this nice part to it. So it's not all gone, but it's not there in its entirety. And the last one I'm going to show you of the sad news is here. And this just happened this last month. This is a beautiful building on University Avenue. And this is what it used to look like. And it had these wonderful deco cast stone little pinnacles, and this nice almost Gothic look to it. This is the lobby, which luckily has not been changed. Again, you'll see the zigzag and this frieze around here. This is how the parapet used to look in detail, and this is how it looks today. So I think that I'm hoping that what I've shown you here today will kind of explain how serious the situation is to try and preserve these buildings. I think that that's the end of my slideshow. I'm going to get out of this and I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to answer any of your questions. Okay, Michelle, are
Okay,
you there?
I'm here.
Good.
Yes, so if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. One question I had, is there like a concentration of Art Deco anywhere in the Bronx, or is it truly all over?
Well, I'm going to show you the answer to that question right now. This is the map page of the website. And you'll see that most of it, this is the Bronx, pretty much. All right, so there's the Bronx. Most of it, as you can see, is in the West Bronx.
Yeah, okay.
There are little bits around the beginning of Pelham Parkway, and this is Mosholu Parkway. But the big concentration is in the areas which were developed between the wars in the 20s and 30s in the West Bronx. And just to give you an idea of the majority of the buildings which are already landmarked are in the Grand Concourse Historic District. And that covers buildings of all styles and periods, but it does have 27 Art Deco buildings in it. And that covers just this little area here. And all of the other buildings that I've been showing you tonight are in the rest of the Bronx, up and around here. And I have in my search archive put together a collection of the buildings which should be landmarked. And there are 82 of them there. But this is just a personal opinion, and obviously, architectural historians would have to weigh in on it. And I think that every single one of the buildings in my should be landmark list is worthy of preservation.
Agreed.
Okay.
Amalka, you have your hand raised. You can unmute yourself if you'd like.
Okay.
Hi. So I have a question as far as, this is a presentation that obviously we learned about through the Historic Districts Council. And my question is, what is the current advocacy for preserving these buildings look like, and um, how can people get involved with you know, just the advocacy that's taking place at the moment. Let me lower my hand. Um,
Well, I'm hoping to start an advocacy group. Landmarking is a very fraught and complicated process. And ultimately, it requires the backing of local politicians. The last big landmarking of Deco buildings was done in the creation of the Grand Concourse Historic District. That was 2011. And that came about as a result of an exhibition that was held, and you will be able to see that in my sources page. An exhibition which was held by an architectural photographer and historian called Carl Rosenstein, who is still around. And he mounted an exhibition in 1998, which had the attention of the Bronx Borough president at that time, Fernando Ferrer. It had the attention of the Art Deco Society of New York, and it had the attention of the Historic Districts Council. And it turned out to be very influential. And this was just an old style exhibition that was held in one of the galleries at Fordham University. And together with other things, such as the publication of this book called Boulevard of Dreams by Constance Rosenblum in 2009, ultimately led to the creation of the Grand Concourse Historic District. And some similar movement of interest and exposition is going to be needed to persuade the politicians to get behind the idea, and ultimately the Landmarks Preservation Commission, which is one of the reasons why I started with the HDC, because they are very crucial and influential in this process. So I'm hoping that this could be the start of some kind of a movement.
That is great. And yes, we will definitely be in more contact about that. So you asked Miranda asked a two-part question. You answered the first part.
The other
Second,
part was Miranda, sorry?
so the question is, are there any female architects associated with Art Deco in the Bronx or otherwise?
Unfortunately, I have not discovered any. And historically, even contemporaneously, they are few and far between, although they are beginning to make a mark in the world of architecture. But in the 20s and 30s, there were precious few. There were people who worked with Le Corbusier, and I forget the name of the young woman who was an associate of his, who was very influential in modernist architecture, but she was not notoriously an Art Deco architect. And I don't know of any, and if anybody does, then I'd love to hear about it.
Someone also asked, will City of Yes possibly destroy Art Deco buildings? Do you
I'm hoping it will not. Mostly the buildings are too valuable to the landlords to pull them down. But it doesn't stop them from kind of mutilating them. That's the big problem. I don't think in the great period of destruction in the Bronx in the 70s, most of the Art Deco buildings survived. Um, they're sound still today, where the systems have been updated. It makes them kind of have a useful life. So I don't think the city of Yes is going to have a negative effect.
That is great to hear. Someone else asked, are there any Art Deco buildings in the Bronx Zoo, Botanical Gardens, or college campuses, Lehman, Florida, Manhattan, that are not apartments, so wouldn't be on your website, but are there any,
Yes,
notable Art
there
Deco
are. There
buildings?
are there are there are quite a few important Art Deco structures, which are actually landmarked. Um, um, Orchard Beach, the promenade at Orchard Beach is a fabulous example of Art Deco architecture and is in the process of being renovated. That's Art Deco. There are the entrance gates to the Bronx Zoo on the south side are wonderful wrought iron Art Deco design, which I think are also landmarked. The Dollar Savings Bank on the Grand Concourse is now a fabulous Art Deco supermarket, which I think everybody should go and do their shopping there who likes Art Deco, which is also landmarked. The Bronx County Courthouse is Art Deco, is also landmarked. And there are a couple of other non-residential buildings which are landmarked. And I think that there's a website which gives a list of all of the Deco buildings that are landmarked in the site in the Bronx somewhere. Herman Ritter High School, that's another beautiful Art Deco building in the Bronx, which is landmarked. If you get a chance to see that in the South Bronx on Boston Road.
Someone asked, will this be available? Yes, it is currently being recorded. It will be available on our YouTube channel and our website, where you can also watch all of our previous preservation schools and virtual tours and much more. So please do go check out our YouTube channel. And George, you have your hand raised. You can unmute yourself.
Thanks. And thank you, John. Just a note, she's not, I don't think, considered an architect, but Hildreth Mier was a great artist and designer who designed the lobbies of
Oh, yes,
One Wall
absolutely.
Street
She was,
and
yes,
also St.
yes, she did
Bart's. And
wonderful,
yeah, right.
wonderful mosaics and ceramics.
Exact St. Bart's and
Yes,
also
yes, I
Temple
should, yes,
Emmanuel.
I should have thought, I should
But
have
I
thought.
don't I don't think she's considered an architect. She's an artist, but she did
Yes, yes,
contribute to the lobbies and also
yes.
the soon to be open One Wall Street. But my question actually was next, I don't know if this is at all your area of interest or expertise, but next Tuesday at the Landmarks Commission, there's a proposal for 30 Rockefeller Plaza, which is, I think anyone would agree, is one of the great Deco landmarks of the city, if not the world. And the proposal is for LED replacement of the fabulous neon lighting.
Yeah.
And I'm forming an opinion of this right now. I mean, I think certainly the neon is a signature of all of Rockefeller Plaza, but particularly 30 Rock. So do you have any thoughts on that, John?
Yeah, I think that neon, unfortunately, is one of those things which is also threatened by progress. And we should do everything we can to preserve it. It's in terms of the its use for Art Deco in the great movie houses of yore. You couldn't do a kind of a movie house canopy without Deco.
And do you think that LED cannot replace that
No, I
effect?
think the quality of LED is nasty. It's it's the
Hmm.
same with, if you have an LED headlight in a car, it doesn't have the softness of an old cathode bulb. And there's a kind of a glare to it that I think is you don't find in neon, and I think LED would be totally inappropriate.
Yeah,
I don't
one
have
thing
a
I
problem
want to
with.
look up also, and Michelle or someone might have an idea on this. I believe I have to look up the landmarks law, but I think that it's about preserving the industrial history. I mean, you
Yeah,
reminded me of the exposition in 1925 was
yeah,
called Art Industriel.
yeah.
So I'm wondering if the preservation of the technology is not part of the landmarks law.
Yeah, I would have thought it should be.
Thank you.
We actually have a preservation school on neon if anyone is interested in that. You can, again, go check that out on our YouTube channel.
I'll do it before Tuesday, Michelle. Thank you.
You are welcome. Yeah,
Can
it's
you
actually
repeat that again, Michelle? You have a preservation school, what?
about neon lighting.
Okay, thanks.
Well, this was great. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, John. This was very, very interesting, very fascinating.
Thank you for joining me. I hope I've been able to communicate my enthusiasm for this obsession of mine and that we can get something started.
Yes, agreed.
And a little plug, in addition to being proud board member of the Historic Districts Council, I'm also a board member of the Art Deco Society.
Right.
So, John, I'm sure you're familiar with the Art Deco
Well,
Society.
I have been communing with Tony Robbins over their registry, and I'm afraid I kind of overwhelmed them with the number of Art Deco buildings that I had to add to their Bronx section.
Oh, we could talk about that, but adsny.org is another place to look for Art Deco
Yeah.
information.
You go, John.
Apparently, there's an in-person event at Rockefeller Center on December 18th. I just went to the website when their name was mentioned, and something about the sculptures of Rockefeller Center, Art Deco sculptures.
That's
Yeah, I think
correct.
ADSNY is doing a thing on them. Yeah.
Anyone who's a member of ADSNY know if it's just going to be the sculptures, or is it reliefs and architecture, or the focus just going to be sculpture?
It's probably going to be sculpture because Rockefeller Center is a frequent subject of Art Deco Society tours. But the sculptures are great.
Okay.
So just before we go, for anybody that doesn't know how to access the website, it's very easy. Unfortunately, it doesn't come up on Google, but it comes up on all the other search engines. But if you just type badaha.org into that little top URL space in your browser, it'll bring the website straight up. And I think you'll find all kinds of stuff in there that you'll enjoy if you like Art Deco.
Yes, it's a great website. Highly recommend everyone go check it out and learn some more about Bronx Art Deco.
And there's a contact us site there if you've got any. There's an email that you can contact the site if you have any questions about the content.
I have one more question. I'm sorry. I'm wondering how serious right now is, because you mentioned I'm gonna look out for these sort of step balcony things when they're doing construction. But I'm just wondering how prevalent and how common is it for I guess developers, or I don't know who's responsible, to be removing Art Deco detailing from the details
Well,
from the building. And is there a consciousness about it?
Yeah, it's very prevalent. The problem is that there are laws in a way which force landlords to do it. There's a local law 11 which is called the FISP program, Facade Inspection Program, which requires landlords to inspect their facades every 10 years or so, and make sure that they're secure and don't drop masonry on the sidewalk below to endanger people. And essentially, there's nothing to prevent them from ripping off beautiful Art Deco parapets and just putting up plain brickwork, and which makes the work of the preservationists even harder. And the only way that to effectively stop that from happening is for the building to become landmarked. And then they have to go through the Landmarks Preservation Commission to get permission to do what they want to do. And that's the only way to preserve them.
Is anyone that you know of working with the New York Landmarks Conservancy? Because if the whole district is not a historic district, then individual buildings would have to be.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Again, I'm hoping to get some kind of movement started to get preservationists at all levels. There's a larger problem. I mean, we're spoiled in New York because we've got so many fabulous Art Deco buildings, and we don't pay enough attention to the neighborhoods where the buildings are terrific, but they're not glitzy or expensive or fancy. These are places where ordinary people live, and a lot of the Bronx neighborhoods are extremely low income. And the people in those neighborhoods have many more important things to worry about than their Art Deco buildings. So unfortunately, the pressure has to come from outside.
Okay. Well, I'll email you because it's something I'd be interested in.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Years ago, with the New York Landmarks Conservancy, they have a program called Sacred Sites Program. And I worked on that where I just basically went around Brooklyn. Brooklyn is big enough on its own, but just surveyed all the Catholic churches that were in danger of being demolished or whatever. And so I think that kind of thing needs to happen with all these buildings where we create a map and then we just,
Yeah, absolutely.
So each one survey it, the condition and whatever, because if the condition is excellent, then the landlord can't say, oh, I had to remove it because.
Well, no. The thing is that even if the parapet is marginally kind of problematic, they'll just rip the whole thing off. They're not sensitive to the architecture, and it's a whole different mindset. Okay. Obviously, I think that it's less of a problem in high income neighborhoods. If you go into the Upper West Side or Upper East Side, you don't find the same destruction of their Art Deco apartment houses as you find in the Bronx and parts of Upper Manhattan and even in the Brooklyn, even some of the great Art Deco buildings in Brooklyn are in more middle-class neighborhoods where they're more sensitive to that kind of destruction.
Well, on the Upper East Side and the Upper West Side and probably parts of Brooklyn, they're in historic districts already, John. Yep. So they're protected in addition to any socioeconomic factors. I'd also say that local law level is the reason why the entire bloody city is covered in scaffolding, which is something that I hope HDC and any other organization will begin to tackle, because there's something wrong at the Department of Buildings that one person, one inspector, or one drone can cover an entire block with scaffolding in perpetuity. So that's just one of my hobby horses.
We are trying to put together either a panel or a presentation about all of this so that more people are aware, and to try and determine how we can maybe make some changes or get some new laws.
That's right. I think Thornton Tomasetti, you're working with them they are working on a study. That's great, Michelle. Thank you.
This has to definitely be a multi-organization project.
Yep.
I think the more pressure from different organizations, the better. And I think it should start right away. So,
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. We will be in contact, John, about how to move forward.
Good.
Michelle, you're with I missed the first few minutes, like first 4 minutes of the presentation. You're with the Historic Districts Council?
Yes.
Okay, what's your position there?
I'm the Director of Communications and Programs.
Okay. I'll email you.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yes, once again, thank you very much. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you all. Thank you.
And yes, hopefully we will see you again soon at a future HGC event. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
I'm sure I will, Michelle.
Thank you. I'm gonna try to make the Rockstyle Center one. Hopefully I'll see some of you
Thank
guys there.
you.
Bye.
Thanks, John.